that biology, I actually have a brochure here that has some of the different stages. It doesn't have them all, but maybe this will be helpful for us in like processing. So this here is a picture of an 8-week embryo, and when you look at the picture is actually much larger than what an 8-week embryo is. It's basically, we've blown it up so that you can see the different development that's actually taking place. So at this point, you're about the size of a quarter. Obviously, you're not flat, you're rounded, but about the size of a quarter at this stage. So these are also different stages of development. And let me know if that's glaring. You can move it how you need to. So this here is a sperm and an egg. They're coming together. Fertilization hasn't taken place yet. I would actually say that that's not a human being, because you have two separate entities that are still separate entities at that point, even though they're coming together. Fertilization hasn't actually taken place. Then you have fertilization. This is a 2-cell conceptus going through the fallopian tube, traveling to the uterus. This is implantation, which takes place at about 6 days. So that's when it actually attaches itself to the uterine wall. Here is 4 weeks. So it would have been about a week prior that the heart started beating at that point. You have a 7-week embryo. At about 6 weeks, they know there's some type of brain something. It's not necessarily brain activity, but that's when something starts. They can detect something, And then this is the second trimester, 18 weeks, or a time period in the second trimester. The third trimester is here, and they're representing that with a 35-week picture, and then a partially born child. So you don't have to pick specifically one of those bubbles, but is there like a time frame where you might draw it in between one of those bubbles, or maybe you're like, no, it actually is one of those bubbles?
I am not entirely sure, and I'm not sure that like I can make this decision, if that makes sense. Like I don't feel like I am educated enough to make a decision like that.
Okay. I actually think that's a pretty educated response that you had, in the sense that if you don't know the biology, it would make sense that we wouldn't desire to choose where to cut off that line, because what could happen?
It could be too late, I guess. Like it could be over that line.
So do you mind if I share with you my understanding of the biology?
Sure.
And why I would draw the line, where I would draw the line? Okay. Some people think I'm crazy, but I would actually draw the line at fertilization, and for very specific reasons. Science. When the sperm and egg come together, science shows us that they literally cease to exist when fertilization happens. So fertilization isn't this like they came together, boom, fertilization happened. My understanding is that there's about a 24-hour period where fertilization is taking place, but once fertilization has taken place, you have the sperm and the egg, which have literally ceased to exist, and you now have this like distinct DNA human organism that has its own genome. And tell me your name again.
Julia.
Julia? Julia, that's when you got your Julia-ness. Everything was in this one cell here that you needed. All of the programming, everything from your eye color to what your finger, like your fingerprints would be, was all programmed here. There were only 2 essential things that were added to you from here to get you to this stage. In the same way that there's only 2 essential things that are going to be added to you to get you to the stage of an elderly adult. What are the 2 things that you need in order to survive?
Are you talking about like basically it's like food and water? Or,
Yeah, so basically you need adequate nutrition. And there's one other thing that you need in order to survive.
Shelter.
Yes, you need a proper environment in order for you to survive. If you are a whole organism at this point, and those are the only 2 things that are added to you in order for you to be able to, that you need in order to continue through your stages of development, if that's the exact same thing that was needed here, nothing else, nothing essential was added, no heart was input, heart wasn't inserted at a certain time, you didn't have lungs inserted at a certain time, you actually did that from within yourself, in the same way that a 2-year-old's child continues to develop and the reproductive system continues to develop. So from this point forward, we must have been that same organism, that same human being, because if you weren't a human being here, you couldn't have been a human being here. And so for me, that's incredibly important, because if the thing that ties us together is our human nature, or the fact that we're human, We want to be very, very careful not to exclude, like we mentioned earlier, to exclude anyone from that, because if we do, that foundation for which we stand on is broken, or that foundation for which we stand on to demand our own rights. So those are just my thoughts. When you hear that, does your mind go, oh yeah, that makes sense? Or does it think, how on earth could that one cell be a human being like you and I?
I mean, I definitely understand what you're saying. In terms of, I don't want to say like agreeing, because like I do agree with like what you're saying. I feel like it should be more informed in terms of like going further into this like talk about it.